Big time win for the Pacers over the Mavs. They keep climbing the standings. That's 3 in a row. And it was one of their best games of the entire season. We'll break down the win. Ben Sheppard, Myles Turner, everybody stepping up for the Pacers on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Monday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today, big win to talk about for the Pacers, beating the Mavs on Sunday. Mavs had won 7 straight, hadn't lost since the trade deadline, came into Indiana. Little chance. Pacers, big win. Maybe their best of the season. I'll make that argument in just a second. Lots to talk about from a very complete Pacers performance. Lots of guys stepping up in unique ways, especially. They crushed the Mavs, and Tyrese Haliburton wasn't sensational, and Pascal Siakam wasn't sensational. They were good, but it was a very fascinating team win for the Pacers. We'll cover how they did it. We'll talk about the best performances of the night, at least compared to expectations. Myles Turner's best game of the season to me, and Ben Sheppard was phenomenal. Talk a little Raptors. Lots to get to today. Quick programming note, if you're on the audio feed, yes, this did go up much later than normal in the day. This is the only day that should happen, like ever. We are doing a small transition of Locked On shows to where we post. It'll never happen again. I hope you still get this before the Raptors game. If you're on YouTube, congrats. This is a normal time to post. Let's get right in to Pacers-Mavs. Pacers were not favored in this game, right? They were 2.5, 1.5 point underdogs, depending on where you looked. That doesn't matter that much. That's just to say they were not expected to win, even if you thought it was a toss-up. No one expected them to win by 22. And oh, by the way, on the same night, the Orlando Magic lost to the Hawks, and the 76ers lost to, I forget who they played. And all of a sudden, if the Pacers win Monday night, they're in 5th in the Eastern Conference. That's why these games matter. That is why every game matters for the Pacers down the stretch of the season. But even these games where they're, it's a toss-up or are close calls, it's very important, right? The Magic just lost to the Hawks, and they almost lost to the Pistons the night before that. The 76ers played the Bucks, who are good, but still, they're at home. That's a maybe toss-up game. They got smoked, right? This matters so much for the Pacers, who could move to 5th tomorrow night. And they crushed the Mavs. I keep saying they beat the Mavs. They crushed the Mavs. 22-point win. They have 5 games this season where they beat a team by more than 22 points. That would be the Pistons, the Wizards, the Hornets, the Hawks, and the Spurs. And their other games over 15-point wins were the Hawks, the Jazz, the Bulls, the Hornets. This is pretty comfortably, to me, the Pacers' best, most complete win of the season. They had that win in Miami without Haliburton where they went crazy. They beat Cleveland with some pretty good performances early in the season. But I think for my money, especially given how well the Mavs have been playing of late, this was the Pacers' best quality performance of the season. The Mavs just didn't have it. They couldn't keep up. The first quarter they did, and the rest of the game, the Pacers absolutely cruised. And for my money, that is why this is the best, and in a critical time, Pacers win of the season. And it was very untraditional, which we'll get into more detail on Turner and Sheppard and more stuff from this game as we get going. But they smoked the Mavs with Tyrese Haliburton's stat line, 17 points, 10 assists, both below his season average. He was 1 for 5 from deep, below his season average, right? He had 4 steals. His team defense was solid. They were able to put him, despite the Mavs having such a high-powered backcourt, they were still able to put Tyrese Haliburton not on Kyrie or Luka Doncic. He got to be on Josh Green. That helped him play that kind of game where he can have 4 steals and be more of a defensive impact, right? Very rare that Haliburton's defensive impact is that strong. Pascal Siakam, 12 points on 11 shots. 9 rebounds is where his impact came from, right? So far, Haliburton had 17 and 10. That's not to diminish what he did offensively, but his steals stood out. For Siakam, his rebounding stood out. He had 12 points on 11 shots, right? He's typically better in other ways than that. Ben Mathurin, 14 points on 14 shots, but 3 steals, 5 assists, 11 rebounds. This is the kind of stuff it took for the Pacers to win this game. There are guys who you usually think of as like, if they win or they win comfortably, dominated on offense, or at least like rose to a level above their expectation and got it done. That was not the case at all. The two Pacers starters who rose to the occasion offensively and were fantastic were Myles Turner and Andrew Nembhard. Andrew Nembhard had an unbelievably good game. I'm almost sad I don't get to talk about him a little more, and I just could do it right now. 7 for 8 from the field, hit his only three, 15 points, 3 boards, 2 assists, 1 steal, no turnovers, +8, and spent all of his 33 minutes guarding either Luka Doncic or Kyrie Irving while having that offensive impact. Sensational. Absolutely awesome performance from Andrew Nembhard to do that on both ends. You could argue pretty handily, I think, that he was their best player in this game because of that defensive impact. He started the game on Kyrie and Ben Mathurin, who deserves a lot of credit for this game. Ben Mathurin guarded Luka for a lot of the game and had 11 rebounds and 5 assists. Like, at some point, you just don't care that he had 14 points. All the Pacers want is for him to get better at this team concept kind of stuff. That is the kind of game he had tonight, where he was team defense great, making Luka's life harder, hitting the glass, passing, phenomenal, right? Nembhard, same stuff, and he drilled his shots 7 for 8 from the field. And Myles Turner, cookies for Myles Turner. I keep stealing the Lockdown Heat credit cookies and blame pie stuff, but I think it's great phrasing. Myles Turner, 33 points, season high. Only 30-point game this season. 12 free throw attempts, the most he's had in 3 seasons. Under Rick Carlisle, that's his most free throw attempts in a game. 8 boards. Awesome offensive game for Myles Turner. And it comes down to a couple things. One is that he was hitting stuff, right? He made all of his twos, 8 for 8 on 2-pointers. His 3 was not particularly falling, but he was hitting long twos, or like deep mid-range, I guess. They weren't like long twos, to the point that Derek Lively, who was on him a lot, still had to be very cognizant of the pop, or still cognizant of Turner in space in a way that made it very easy for him to get to the basket a lot of the time. And the Mavs were trying to pressure Tyrese Haliburton very hard. And so all of a sudden they ended up switching or backside rotating or whatever, and Turner ended up with a guard on him a lot. And the Pacers were like, hey, let's punish that. You know, Myles Turner said his teammates have been talking about him getting more going at the rim. Well, if he has a small on him, that's a great way to do that. And he punished them, and that's why he had 12 free throw attempts in this game. Let me be clear. The Pacers as a team had 17 free throw attempts. Myles Turner had 12. Luka, a very good foul drawer, had 12 free throw attempts. So did Myles Turner. So to recap, the Pacers starting 5, Ben Mathurin, his big impact, rebounding and assists. Pascal Siakam's rebounding. Myles Turner getting to the foul line. Andrew Nembhard guarding Luka Doncic and Andrew Nembhard, and Tyrese Haliburton 4 steals and his usual offensive stuff. What? That is not the formula you expect from the Pacers, and that's how you crush the Mavs. You have a good, solid starting 5 that's fitting well together, have that kind of game. And that was massive. They were all fantastic in ways that they usually aren't, on top of, in a lot of cases, doing stuff that they still can do, right? It's not like Siakam and Haliburton had awful offensive games. They would have lost if that was the case. It's not like Mathurin was terrible. 14 points is 14 points. Andrew Nembhard drilled his shots and was a reliable ball handler. I like, that stuff happened too, but a lot of unheralded stuff. And that doesn't even account for Ben Sheppard, who we'll dig into a ton in the next segment, who had 15 points on 6 shots in 12 and a half minutes. 4 assists, plus 14. Phenomenal game. Obi Toppin was just everywhere and somehow was plus 16 in his minutes and was shooting well. And Doug McDermott was there and plus 8. The whole bench was good. TJ McConnell with 12 points and 7 assists. That was more traditional. And Jalen Smith was back actually playing. The bench had more traditional impacts compared to what you expect from those guys, although Ben Sheppard, of course, having a career night is a little different. But the way the Pacers won this game and the way they had, for my money, their most impressive complete win of the season. Again, there's always stuff you can nitpick. They had 12 turnovers. They only had 6 offensive rebounds, whatever. You could go on and on. They actually got outshot from 3 pretty handily by the Mavs. And yet they crushed Dallas, who's on fire, the second longest winning streak in the NBA behind only the red-hot Boston Celtics, because they had unheralded, unusual contributions from everybody who played. It wasn't just the typical stuff, and that is how you can get a big-time win that sets you up for potentially, again, this Pacers team has had tons, including against the Raptors at home, letdown games this season, but potentially a chance to move into 5th in your conference on Monday night. Big win by the Pacers. They earned it. Two guys deserve more attention. I went into it a little bit of detail with Turner. I want to talk more about Myles Turner. I want to talk way more about Ben Sheppard. So much more to talk about from Pacers Mavs. They play again tonight. We will get right to that in just a second. But first, we have got to talk about the lovely folks over at Grammarly. No matter what kind of work you do, how you communicate is key. Emails, reports, presentations, all equally important to the collaboration needed to get things done. Grammarly can help. I use Grammarly every single day. Fantastic for copy editing. Fantastic with emails. Whatever you're doing, it can make you more confident in your writing and be more efficient. It impacts your day-to-day. And again, I can attest to this. 96% of Grammarly users report that Grammarly helps them craft more impactful writing. It works across 500,000 apps and websites. It understands your writing in context, so it gives you relevant suggestions in terms of edits or phrasing or whatever. They have tone suggestions, right? You can save time with their one click and go from editing drafts in hours to seconds. 93% of professionals using Grammarly Premium report that it helps them get more work done. It's the gold standard of responsible AI with 14 years of experience and just about every IT certification under the sun. Make a bigger impact at work with Grammarly. Sign up and download for free at Grammarly.com/podcast. Again, that's Grammarly.com, Grammarly.com/podcast. Easier said, done. We are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, hop on over to Locked On Mavs. Nick Angstad, who spent a ton of time with him at All-Star Weekend. He may have even stayed with me. We have now done two different NBA event trips together. Can break down the Mavs side of this for you. Their first loss since the trade deadline. A lot of angst from the Mavs sphere about Tim Hardaway Jr.'s performance. Even though Kyrie and Luka were both good enough, Tim Hardaway Jr. minus 14, 4 for 12 from the field. Nick Angstad will have everything on the Mavs side of this over at Locked On Mavs here at Locked On Pacers. We have two guys to really dive into, and I will start with the guy I started talking about a second ago, and that is Myles Turner. Myles Turner, 33 points in this game. Only his sixth game this season over 25 points. His first time clearing 30. So, of course, that alone shows you how huge this is. That said, of those 5 games clearing 25 points, he took 14 or more shots in all of them. And he took 15 in this one, but he didn't get to the foul line as much in those. That's what separated this game from his past. I alluded to this earlier, but to really dive in, Myles Turner 5 times this season has hit his season high in free throw attempts. If you'd like to know, that number is 8. 8 free throw attempts in a game. That's his season high. Under Carlisle, and that includes like half a season of playing alongside Sabonis, which is a little different. But either way, under Carlisle, 8 free throw attempts was his season high this year. 8 free throw attempts was his season high in 21-22. He had 11 in a game last year, and he made all of them. This was, under Rick Carlisle, the most free throws Myles Turner has taken in a game. And that speaks to a lot of things. One is what I said earlier. His team, Myles Turner shared this with us post game, and we got a little bit of it from his teammates, that he's been talking with them about, and the conversation has been about, his attacking of the rim with Siakam now, being kind of a perimeter threat. I don't know where I'd call Siakam a threat from. He's a threat from everywhere as a scorer, but like Haliburton shooting, and Nesmith's a great shooter, and Nembhard's been shooting very well since returning from that in-season tournament injury. They have the spacing. And Turner's a good spacer. That's valuable. He should still take threes when he's open, but he can be a rim pressure guy, right? He really added that to his game a few years ago. That's what leveled him up more as a player than anything to me. I've talked about that before, was the year he shot 79% at the rim, and he's been well over 75% all 3 years since. He was never close to that before, and that did start under Rick Carlisle, and he upped his volume at the rim last year. So once he got just like one dribble post moves, that little hook shot he goes to sometimes, just being way more threatening in the post, that really made him harder to guard, way harder to guard, because the three didn't just vanish. It's not the most consistent thing, but it's still a very valuable shot he has in his arsenal this year, only at 33%. That he's at his lowest 3-point percentage this season prior to this game. It might be higher now, right? Since his rookie year, right? He isn't having like a lights out 3-point shooting season, but he still has some mid-range game to him. He still makes decisions in the short roll sometimes. He's still a threat to pop or roll. And so now that he's added this rim finishing game, that's something the Pacers want him to go to more, because one, he makes the shots, right? He entered this game at 76.7% from 0 to 3 feet. He's also over 50% from every single mid-range zone, which he also has been the last 2 seasons prior to this one. 16 feet and in, Myles Turner, that's a good shot for the Pacers. Long twos, he's unusually hot this year, but still, that is what makes him so valuable and versatile. So in this game, when they're playing the Mavs, and the Mavs aren't huge, Josh Green's kind of tall, but, a little thinner. PJ Washington at the 4, he's taller, he's valuable. But then off the bench, some centers. Kleba's more of a center. Daniel Gafford's definitely a center. And then shorter guards or wings. And Derek Jones Jr. didn't end up on him that much, but he's shorter. So a lot of the matchups that ended up on Turner from switching or from scramming back to him after 2 guys went at Haliburton or after rotating from the backside because the Haliburton plus whatever screener action made the defense rotate. All of a sudden, Myles Turner's like, oh, I can just shoot over this guy. Or like, oh, I can dribble twice backwards and I'll put this guy into the rim and I can score. That is a big growth point for him over the last couple seasons. But in this game, that's why he was so dominant, because he was able to do that kind of stuff. And so on a night that he stunk from 3, 2 for 7. That's not a good night from 3. The other nights he had big scoring nights this season. 6 for 10 from deep, 6 for 8, 4 for 5, 2 for 3, 2 for 8. Those are his over 25-point games this season. All but one of those good 3-point shooting games. Outside of that game against Milwaukee in the in-season tournament semis. So usually his 3-ball has been a reliable indicator of his point totals. This game, he bucked that trend, and that was very significant for him. That was significant for the Pacers. It makes Tyrese Haliburton's life easier. When Haliburton can go, oh, okay, 2 guys are coming at me, great. Myles Turner, here, you make a decision. It doesn't even, he can just give it up and go to Siakam or go to whoever's on the weak side, like Andrew Nembhard, who hit everything today. That is really valuable for the Pacers to have that kind of threat from Turner, and he was terrific, absolutely terrific in this game. I'll have a story about him sometime on Monday, and what kind of went into this game, all the stuff that was said about him, his development, all that kind of stuff. Ben Sheppard, hooey. I talked a little bit about Ben Sheppard after the Toronto game, and then I wrote a story about Ben Sheppard, and then he kept playing better. He kept playing better and better. So we're going to go small picture on Ben Sheppard for this game and big picture on Ben Sheppard for the next, let's say, 10 minutes. So this is from my story. Before January 15th, that's kind of an arbitrary date, but kind of not. They played at Utah that day on January 15th, and they were really banged up, if you remember that game. And he played 25 minutes and 22 seconds, Ben Sheppard did. And then the very next day, they did the Pascal Siakam trade, right? So they needed him in Utah because of the injuries. And then they've been, they lost Bruce Brown that day. They've kind of been waffling through lineups between injuries to like Nesmith, and Mathurin was out with those illnesses and the knee stuff and all, guys have been in and out. So he's played a lot more. But that was the date it happened, was January 15th. Before January 15th, Ben Sheppard had only played in more than 3 games in a row once the whole season, right? So for the first 39 games of the Pacers season, he only played 4 games in a row once. And he played a total of about 4.5 minutes of play in those 4 games combined. All garbage time, right? So not playing very much. He reached 10 minutes of playing time 4 times in the Pacers' first 39 games, right? Mostly garbage time. A few games where they needed him, right? But mostly garbage time. Since then, this is before the Mavs game that just happened. So from January 15th until February 22nd game, Ben Sheppard is averaging 15.5 minutes per game. Averaging. And that does not include this game where he played less than that, but still over 10 minutes. He has played in all but 1 game for the Pacers in that span. He only didn't play when they played at New York. They were healthy that game, believe it or not. And he didn't play, except now I don't know if that would ever happen again, right? He has become, I wrote this and I maybe regret this word a little bit, but I put the word important piece for the Pacers. I don't know if I'd quite go that far, even though I put it in writing, but he is a rotation piece for this team because he can flat out defend. That's where it starts, right? And that's what I've been saying mostly the whole time with him. And this happened the game that Rick Carlisle got ejected when they played the Nuggets. And Ben Sheppard came in when Lloyd Pierce subbed him in the 4th quarter. And he played the whole 4th quarter. And he defended his tail off. And I said after that game for the first time, I think out loud, Ben Sheppard's one of the best 5 defensive players on the Pacers this season as a rookie, which is nuts to think about. Rookies are usually not good defenders. And his team defense, he'll even admit this probably, needs some work. But his on-ball defense is amazing, and his energy is unbelievable, and his instincts are great. So they're again, this isn't their best lineup, but their best raw defensive 5 is probably Nembhard, Sheppard, Nesmith, Siakam, Turner, right? That is a wonderful defensive 5, and Ben Sheppard is a part of it because his defense is good. And hey, guess what? He had to defend some Kyrie Irving in the fourth quarter of this game. And for the first couple minutes, it didn't go so good. And then for the next couple minutes, it went great. And he hit some threes. And all of a sudden, the game broke open and the Mavs never had a chance again. This is what he is now. He is a useful defender for this Pacers team. This game was more than that, and we'll talk about that in a second. And I still have more stuff to share because I, again, just wrote about him, right? But he has just been playing phenomenal basketball. And you never know with rookies when it'll end, if it can be consistent, if they start ending up on other teams' scouting reports, how does that change how they're guarded or how their impact is? But this has been such a big thing for the Pacers that he has evolved into a wing piece that can be in their rotation, because in this wobbly part of the season, they've needed depth, and Ben Sheppard has given it to him. What did he do in this Mavs game? What else is there to know about Ben Sheppard as the season progresses forward? Boy, do we have more to talk about with him coming right up here on the Locked On Pacers podcast. But first, let's talk about Stitch Fix. You know that instant confidence boost you get from an outfit that makes you look really good? Well, that's what I get with Stitch Fix. With Stitch Fix, you get a stylist who understands your style, size, and budget. They do the shopping for you. Easily upgrade your wardrobe with a pro stylist that gets you on-trend favorites. You give them your size, you give them your style, you give your budget preferences. You order boxes, how and when you want. Boom, no subscription required, and they're coming. 5 just for you pieces and outfit recommendations, pro styling advice. You can get just the right stuff. It's on point, exactly what you need. If you don't like to shop, boom, you just saved a bunch of time and a bunch of effort, and you're looking trendy. Shipping, returns, and exchanges are always free. Style that makes you feel good as it makes you feel as good as you look. Get started today at stitchfix.com/lockedon. That's stitchfix.com/lockedon. One more time, stitchfix.com/lockedon. And we are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day for your second listen. Okay, I watched Nuggets Warriors after I got home from the Pacers game, and it was a banger game. Locked On Nuggets, they won that game. It would be a good place to go. Any of the teams around the Pacers also in this standings race right now. Locked On Sixers, Locked On Heat, Locked On Magic to get the latest on the teams the Pacers care a lot about in the stretch. And also, I just talked about fashion, so I must share. I have my Caitlin Cooper Hot Girl basketball shirt on. Highly recommend you get your own, everybody. They are fantastic. And a nod to Rick Carlisle's even pretty girls get boring if they can't guard quote from earlier this season. That was just sensational. Too funny. Let's close this out with a little more Ben Sheppard talk. You know, when talking to the team about him and his energy and what he's able to do for them, right? Rick Carlisle loved that he's a process-oriented guy and he can do all this stuff. What I really thought was interesting was he's played for the Mad Ants a lot. So Mad Ants head coach Tom Hankins said he's got so much energy and that's awesome. Sometimes he have to dial it back a little bit, right? Like in a constructive way. Going from fourth gear down to third so that he can have that consistent effort, but not be like doing too much and being right in the play. And I thought that was fascinating. And he has really absorbed this playing time into confidence and being a spark for this Pacers team. It's been so fascinating. And I've been asking, a couple people, including Rick Carlisle, like, when did they notice? Was there a moment, a meeting, a practice, a game where they were like, dang, maybe Ben Sheppard's ready to defend in a way that, I didn't expect. So I saw him at the draft combine, and I thought he was good then. He was like one of the standout performers, but this level of defense, I didn't expect. And Rick was like, yeah, at the draft workout he did with us, he had an idea. He was very active at the time. And so the theme of what you can kind of get from everybody, is that they just really trust him, right? A guy that, and after this game, I think, Derek Kramer told me this at the Game iPacers blog, that he's at the 34% from deep now, and he was on fire in this game. We'll get to this game for him in just a second. But now he's up to like 34, 35% from three this season. You pair that with the defense he has, makes a ton of sense why his teammates trust him. And before this game is when they were talking about how they were like, yeah, dude, we trust you. Catch it, shoot it, man. Get it up. And you saw it in this game. It was very funny. The first time Ben Sheppard caught the ball against the Mavs tonight, he caught it in the corner. He had an open three. He looked at the rim and then put it on the floor. And the second time he caught it in the corner, I was like, he's going to shoot it. They're going to tell him he should have shot the first one. He's going to shoot it. And he did. And he drilled it. And, of course, he went 5 for 5 from deep. He made all the rest of his threes he took during the game. But that's the faith the Pacers have in Ben Sheppard. They trust him to make the right play. They trust him to make shots. They trust him to guard, as the RJ Barrett stop showed, but has still played phenomenal defense since then. That is very high praise for a rookie, even if it is their 14th guy. I mean, 10 points was a career high against the Raptors right before the break. He also had 5 rebounds that night in the game-winning stop, of course. Then he had 7 points and was +6 in that Pistons game. And today, I've referenced a bunch of his stats and moments already. Guards Kyrie a little in the fourth. I think he had a possession or two on Luka throughout the game. Great defense, or at least good enough defense. He was +14, by the way. That's the second highest on the Pacers behind only Obi Toppin. So 15 points for Ben Sheppard, all on threes. That's a career high in points. His previous career high was just 10. He had 4 assists. 4 assists, kept the ball moving, right? That ties his career high. 2 steals, no turnovers. That is a phenomenal bench player. I mean, he was basically a 3-and-D wing in this game. And they don't have Aaron Nesmith, who has literally been a 3-and-D wing this season. And between McDermott's threes and Mathurin's defense in this game on Luka and Sheppard being both, they've found a way to get enough on the wing without Nesmith these last couple games since he got hurt in Toronto. And that's been extremely significant for them as a team. And Sheppard, to me, is like the face of it, right? He only played 12.5 minutes in this game. It's not like he had this crazy massive impact for 48 minutes and changed the game, but he did really kind of change the game because he allowed the Pacers to do something significant, and that is play a full bench lineup successfully. And people were dunking on this group in the fourth quarter, and I'll explain why. I thought this was a funny story. But McConnell, Smith, Toppin, McDermott, Sheppard is like a 5-man unit that works. In the first half, that group got the Pacers the lead, right? They were down when the full bench group came in late in the first quarter. That group got the lead early in the second quarter, and then the starters and some mixing and matching gave it away, and they got it back. And then, so that group was good in the first half. Early in the fourth, and late in the third, that group wasn't so good. Kyrie was going crazy. That group watched the lead get down to 4. Rick Carlisle calls timeout, and I got a bunch of tweet replies from people like, what is he doing? Why does he have this 5-man bench group out there? The reason is they were good in the first half, and they've worked before, and he trusted them. And everybody thought it was dumb, and I suppose results-wise it was dumb because Kyrie was cooking them, but they were good in the first half, and no one said anything. And then immediately out of a timeout, Toppin hits a 3, Sheppard hits 2 threes, they're up 11 again, and then no one said anything. So Carlisle very clearly trusts that group. Now, maybe it won't work all the time, right? That's, again, just some hot shooting from 3 guys. But the fact that Sheppard can guard and McDermott's been shooting and McConnell's been playing very well recently. Jalen Smith was back. Toppin's been such a reliable piece. Like that was a good group in this game. There are some teams that their bench has been terrible against. It's been a big team. It's something I talked about with Will Furr, a big question for the rest of the season. Can their bench get back to what it used to be? Well, in this game it was. And Sheppard was a massive part of that. He continues to look great. And he and Myles Turner really shined above expectations in this game, even though a lot of guys were very good in many different ways. Jalen Smith was back, no pun intended, in the lineup. So Pacers only down Nesmith now. Does not sound like he'll be playing against the Raptors tonight, Rick Carlisle said. So we will see what his status can be. Pacers approaching full health, knock on wood, right now. And they got a very, very complete team win on Sunday to show it. They do play tonight. Not a ton to say on the Raptors, not because I don't know anything about the Raptors, but because you guys just saw the Pacers play the Raptors a week and a half ago before the break on the 14th. That's almost 2 weeks ago now, which is blowing my mind a little bit. That was a tough one for the Pacers. I don't want to just like totally attribute this to mental nonsense, but like the last game before the break is hard, and it was a very emotional game with Siakam at what it was, and that's a lot of excuses. Excuses is the wrong word. That's a lot of just stuff that is extracurriculars, but also Isaiah Jackson started in that game, and they had no centers, and it was weird, and Oscar Tshiebwe was in the rotation. They'll be healthier for this one. Raptors aren't playing particularly well. That doesn't really matter, though. You guys just saw the Raptors play. The key to me, can they do better slowing Scotty Barnes down at all? And can the Pacers get their own offense humming just a little bit more, right? Just a little more balance would be good for them. They shot it well, and that kind of masked some ugliness in that game, and they didn't turn it over very often in that game, which, again, masked some ugliness. But, if they can get in transition more, if they can get it popping on offense, the Raptors have size, but they don't have a lot of skill on their team, which is strange. That sounds like a knock. It's not. They have a fun young team. But I think for the Pacers, the key in this one, I thought that against the Mavs, this was also kind of the case. If the Pacers offense just looks really good, they're going to win, right? And 127 was enough to beat the Raptors before the break. The Mavs, they scored 133. If they can get to like 125 again, I think they've got a really good shot of beating this Toronto team, because this Raptors team, I just don't. They're young, ascending, and they don't necessarily have the right pieces to stop the Pacers' offensive attack. And I think if the Pacers can continue to just shove it down their throats, as they did for much of that first game, especially after a very crummy defensive first three quarters, if the Pacers can score, they're going to win. That's, of course, been the theme for a lot of their season. That was very base level analysis. I'm also looking forward to seeing Bruce Brown and Jordan Ward. I have not talked to them since the trade, so maybe we'll have some stuff to talk about with that tomorrow, as well as the game itself. And then they play the Pelicans on ESPN on Wednesday, and they play the Pelicans Friday. So lots of Pels content coming this week, lots of old player stuff coming. Pacers playing well. We'll talk buyout market later this week, as it should be fully formed, at least who the available players are come Friday. Lots coming here, as usual, on the Locked On Pacers podcast. Thank you guys a ton for listening today. Pacers 3 in a row. Could be in 5th in the East the next time you hear this. Could also be in 7th. That's just how the East standings are. I'm on Twitter /X at Tony R. East, and the show is at Locked On Pacers. Again, if you follow it there, that's where you would have learned that the audio version of this is coming out later because of technology. We will see you guys soon. Thank you so much for listening. Oh, I forgot the people I met at the game. Dang, I should have done this at the beginning. Nolan and Nick, thank you for saying hi. Much appreciated. Everybody, have a wonderful day. We will see you soon.